want to talk to you about today is a faith worth sharing. And those of you that were here a couple weeks ago, I preached on giving your money and your time. And then I did a class on sin. And now I'm going to talk to you about how do you share your faith. Now, the three things that pastors do not like to preach about. Why? There's a lot of misunderstanding, but it's a lot of fear involved, and it's just awkward. And I don't know about you, but I have a hard time sharing my faith. I'm a pastor, right? But I also have a secular job. I work full-time. And in that job, it's a harsh environment in a way. It's not like we're a Christian society anymore. So to say you're a Christian, people look at you. And it's not that I'm ashamed. It's just in this PC world, you don't want to offend anybody. And it's difficult to talk about faith. And people wonder, what if I don't have all the answers? What if they ask me something I can't even get right? Or I don't want to come across as pushy, or that, that Christian who basically is, constantly, saying you need to get saved or whatever. And I don't want to mess up the relationships that I have. And sharing our faith can be very confusing. A woman from Kentucky tells this story. After directory assistants gave her boyfriend's new telephone number, I dialed it and I got a woman. And I said, "Is Mike there?" And she responded, "He's in the shower." "Well, please tell him his girlfriend phoned," I said, and I hung up. And when he didn't call back, I dialed again, and this time a man answered. He says, "This is Mike." She says, "Well, you're not my boyfriend." And he goes, "That's what I've been trying to tell my wife for the last half hour." But that happens. Our lines get crossed. We think we're doing one thing or supposed to do one thing, but in reality, that's not what it's about. We're so concerned about what everybody else is going to think of us. Do you really believe that stuff in the Bible? Adam and Eve and Noah and the ark and the flood and all those rules and regulations that just, hamper my life. Do you really believe all that stuff? And so we get afraid to talk about it. And as I said before, the Bible never claims to be a book of facts. The Bible claims to be a book of truths. So you can understand those stories as a metaphor, or you can understand those stories. They don't have to be literal. As a matter of fact, as we come to find out and you start digging into these stories, they were told over and over for centuries. And they were told to basically make the culture understand a truth. Because truths give us hope. Truths give us ways to live our life to the fullest. And what I can tell you is that most of your friends and your coworkers are searching for truths. They want something they can hang their hat on. In this world that everything just seems relevant, what your beliefs are good and my beliefs are good, the problem is that they find themselves trying to fill this hole in their heart that only God can fill. So what they do is they focus all their time on their work. So they spend 12 hours a day at their job, and they get ahead and they think that's going to do it. Or they take that money and they buy the biggest house. Or they focus only on their kids and kids and kids. And all of a sudden, the kids go off to college and they have nothing. And they have this hole in their heart. And so we do the same thing. We try to fill it with alcohol or drugs, or we try to fill this thing with, porn or Facebook or whatever. We sit down and watch TV. We try to numb ourselves out. And it doesn't work. Why? Because the only thing that's going to fill that hole in your heart is God. You were born that way. And the problem, though, is we try to tell somebody this, but because the far-right Christians have hijacked Christianity to the point where it's literal and this is how it is. And you know what? If you don't believe that the earth was formed in 6 days and God rests on the seventh, literally, then you are a hypocrite and you're wrong. And that's what people think Christianity is. They don't see Christianity as this relationship, that it's all about this loving God and loving others. What they see is this guy on TV who's basically sitting there and oh my gosh, it's terrible. We have to get that back.
Amen.
However, it's still the mission of the church and the call of all believers to fulfill what's called the Great Commission. Some of the last words of Jesus to his first disciples were, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And remember, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." So that's hard because we have to battle this society that doesn't want us to push our Christianity on them, basically because of what the far right has pushed on them. And yet, God says, you need to go share your faith. So how do we do that? So I'd like to invite you into the story today of Philip that Chris read for us. You put Philip's sandals on. He's walking down the road. We don't even know where he was going. He was probably on a mission. Just like we are. We're on a mission. We go through life. We're heading someplace. I'm going to the store. I'm going here. You know, we got a million things going on. And all of a sudden God says, you know what, Philip, I think you need to go down here and find this chariot that's hanging out. Philip doesn't argue. Philip goes. So, you know, pretend you're walking down there. You got dust on your feet. You're coming up. And then all of a sudden you hear the Spirit talk to you and say, go up to that chariot. You notice, if you read it, he doesn't walk. He runs to the chariot. I find that very interesting. So he goes up, and he's open to this. And my question to you is, are you and I open to when God calls us to go talk to somebody? You know, he had this faith that he's going to go wherever God calls. Are you on God's time or your own time? We talked about that several weeks ago. We talked about Chronos time, which is the chronological time of the clock. But that's not God's time, that's our time. Are you willing to be open to the fact that this desert road you are on may be where God is calling you because somebody needs to hear the good news? Do you have the faith that God can work through your relationships and on our daily interactions with our coworkers and strangers alike? So, Philip runs up to the chariot and he hears the guy reading from Isaiah and he pokes his head in and says, hi. He says, do you understand what you're reading? And the eunuch's like, how can I unless somebody explains it to me? And he does. He invites Philip in, and they talk about it, and Philip starts with those scriptures and goes through all these things that Jesus fulfilled, and says, you know what? This is the Messiah, the long-promised Messiah. And they get a little further, and the eunuch's like, what's keeping me from being baptized? And they found some water, and he was baptized. What I find most important about this passage is that the eunuch said, come sit with me. That's what it's about. As a church, we need to hear these words. He invited Philip to come and sit with him. Sit with him. Can you sit with someone? I think you can. The man didn't come to believe because one day he decided his life wasn't right and he came into church. The man didn't come to believe because he stumbled across a TV preacher because he couldn't sleep one night. The man didn't come to believe because he found a gospel tract in the men's room. He believed because Philip took Jesus' words seriously. And when the man said, "Come sit with me," he did. More simply, he came to faith because Philip was willing to sit with him. Philip didn't want him to go visit a church some Sunday morning. Philip went and sat with him. Philip didn't figure that somebody else would talk to him. He went and talked to him. Philip didn't drop a pamphlet in there and run away. He took the time to be in relationship. And I think church that wants to grow needs to understand that growth happens because of relationships. If you want to be serious, not just about being a disciple, but making disciples, it's about relationships. Because no matter how wonderful our church might be, no matter how friendly of people we are, how wonderful we get outside these doors and we help other people through our outreach, no matter how kind of warm fellowship we have, no matter how inspiring the worship or the music is, the vast majority of people in this town who need a church will never know any of that. The vast majority in this town who need a church, who are struggling with life struggles, who aren't sure if God exists, and if God does, they're not sure God would even love them or forgive them because of everything they've done. They wouldn't understand this love of God and how the support of the church can help them, because they're not going to come walking through these doors. Not until they're asked. Not until someone who has taken the time to get to know them, to get them past their reluctance, and ask them, "Would you like to come to church today?" You know what those folks need? They need someone like Philip. They need someone who's willing to come and sit with them. Someone who's willing to meet them where they are. And like Philip, tell them the good news of Jesus Christ. You know, we tend to think it's so hard. I can't tell people about Jesus because I'm not a preacher. I can tell you what you can do. You can sit with someone. Can you listen to their problems and tell them how God helps you through yours? Can you say, "Hey, I don't have all the answers, but you know, I go to church and I go to Bible study and I go to prayer group and we talk about these things and we figure it out." You can be like Philip. Can you meet people where they are? Year in, year out, decade after decade, statistics about how people come to faith in Jesus shows a clear majority enter through a person who cares enough to share how the gospel story has made an impact in their life. Relationships have been and still are and always be God's primary path for bringing people into the kingdom and us bringing the kingdom to earth. So how do we do this? It's enough for me to up there and tell you, preach, yeah, we need to do this, but you're saying, well, how? First, live your life based upon your faith. Don't come to church on Sunday and act one way, and 6 days a week act another. Just like when you have kids and you tell them don't swear, but then you're on the phone dropping the F-bomb every other word. Doesn't work that way. You know what the kid does? He goes and starts talking to his kids, and yeah. But the same thing happens. People are watching you. If they know you're a Christian, they are watching you. Why? Because they think you're going to screw up. Because the biggest thing that I have heard is complain about Christians is that we're hypocrites. We're hypocrites. We say one thing and do another. We say you should live your life this way, but then we don't. We say that, you know, this is the rules and regulations. And if you don't follow it, then you're going to hell, or whatever people keep. They don't see how God in your life makes a difference because you're not living your life like God makes a difference. Your actions speak louder than words. But if I only go through life and people know I'm a Christian and I don't swear, I don't run around with loose ladies and whatever else, is that going to bring somebody to say, you know what? I want what he has. Maybe a little bit, because I've had people come up and say, why are you so happy all the time? That's how Jane came to faith. She was working with some people and she couldn't figure out, they were going through a rough time, and yet they still had joy in their heart. What is it? But then she came up and talked to them, and if they kind of stopped their noses and said, go away, it wouldn't have helped. So the second thing we got to do is you got to tell your story. Be prepared to tell your story. How did you come to faith? Why did you come to faith? Even more, how does your faith help you survive the trials and tribulation of this life? Because it does. I can probably tell you, everybody in this room understands that their faith helps them. Amen? Amen. Now, it's easy to say amen in church, right? But can we go out and tell somebody else, you know what? I know you're struggling with this. I've been down this road. Maybe not the same road you are, but I've been there. I've been depressed. I've had bad relationships. But you know what? I have a great relationship now with my God, who will provide everything I need. And they may turn around and they may say, well, that's just the opiate of the masses. It makes you feel better. It's just a farce. My answer is, so be it. I'm happy. I can go through rough times, and I know I got a God on my side that carries me. And if it's some imaginary thing that happens, I'm still better off for it. But I can tell you in my heart, I know this truth. And we got to understand that we are going to screw up. So when we screw up, that's part of our faith. We come and we make amends. We tell somebody, hey, I'm sorry I screwed up. I'm gonna make it right. And then you understand that you don't have to carry that with you anymore. You're forgiven. Doesn't mean there aren't consequences. But then you go to that person, you talk to them and say, you know what? I screwed up. And part of my faith is that I am to forgive me and make amends. And when you screw up, I am to forgive you. That is so foreign to people. They're like, what is this? And then they think it's false, but that's besides the point. You just keep living your life then. So, maybe you can't preach. But can you sit with somebody? Can you share somebody your story? Going to the whole world, as we're called to do, sounds very, oh my gosh, overwhelming. But it's not. It's not as difficult as it sounds, because we're not supposed to go to the 8 billion people in this world, probably 9 to 10 by now. We're supposed to basically one-on-one. For Philip, all it took was sitting next to a stranger. The question for you and me today is this: what does my faith mean? What does my faith mean to me? That's all. Being part of making disciples doesn't mean you have to preach or pass out Bible tracts or go knock on people's doors. It means that you love your neighbor. It means that you love them so much that you cannot bear to see them struggling with the struggles of life without what you have to carry you through. It means that your heart is open to the needs of the people around you. It means that your mind is open so that you see people as people, not as conditions or stereotypes. It means that you need to make sure that the doors of the church, and I'm not talking those doors, I'm talking these doors, are open for all to come in. everyone. As we come to this table in a moment, this table is open to everyone. It's not based upon the color of your skin. It's not based upon the sex you are. It doesn't matter on your orientation. It's all about being here because God says you are welcome. And we can't expect all who need the church to come wandering in these doors. I know somebody back there needs the church. Hi, Joy. And into our pews. It's not often that somebody will sit beside you and say, is this seat taken? But what we need to do is be the one asking, is this seat taken? We need to find those who are alone and confused and hurt and seeking, those who need what we have, and take the seat beside them. And sometimes sharing your faith is as simple as sharing a bench. That's all. But do you have the belief that your faith is worth sharing? Is your faith worth sharing? Is your faith worth something to you? I believe that our faith brings us joy. It comforts us in our times of trial. Our faith brings us together as a church. Our faith binds us together with others who share faith all over the world. It's not just this little group of people. Everybody. Our faith is a valuable thing. And knowing all of this, here's the challenge. Our faith is too good to keep it to ourselves. We have a faith worth sharing. So pull up a chair. Let these people outside these walls understand what your faith means to you and help them with the struggles they're going through. Let us pray. God, our faith means so much to us, and yet sometimes we are afraid of telling somebody about it. We were not called to be the prosecutor. We're not called to be the judge. We're not even called to be the defense attorney who defends the Christian faith. We are called to be a witness. And all that means, Lord, is us to understand what our faith means and to tell people about it. Lord, give us the courage, give us the strength, and give us the people that you want in our lives for us to talk to. In Jesus' name, amen. So as I said, we come to this table each week. There are no fences around this table. It is open to all. And one of the reasons we do this every week is because it is a time of sharing and caring with our God. That it's a time of remembering what Christ did for us. So we think about it as we break the bread and how the relationships that are broken can be mended through God. And that the relationship that was broken between us and God was healed. And that as the blood was shed, that temple curtain that separated us from God was torn in two. That we have access. And so we remember each time we come to this table what Christ did. So come and commune with your God.